Okay, well, welcome to, today we're going to talk a little bit about nativities from around the world, and I brought a few of them, and I know, Sue, you brought one yourself, and if you're watching on the channel here, or you're here in person, we're going to talk first a little bit and do a little slideshow about kind of the history and some things we look at in nativities. Here. Okay. The depiction of Christ's birth has been a kind of a mainstay in Christian art very, very early on. But the actual kind of three-dimensional depiction of it that we see in nativities really came a little bit later. This is one of the earliest nativity scenes that we have, and this is from a sepulcher, dates back to about 320 AD. And you'll see what's interesting, that there are two of the Magi there, the wise men. There's Mary seated, and quite usually in these very early depictions, she is seated that way. With the baby on her knees, and then behind her there is Joseph, and this was kind of what you would see if you were sepulcher, of course, is a bone box that they put people's bones in and buried them, and so this just gives you an idea of what the very earliest depiction is. Again, no shepherds, no animals, nothing like that. The nativity scene is said to have originated with St. Francis of Assisi in the little Italian town of Greco in 1223, when he set up the first nativity scene, which included no human figures. It was in a small cave. It was an empty manger, and just a donkey and a cow, and that was the first nativity scene. Later on, of course, they did put actors and people and different things in the scene, and but these things were usually outside. They were done on Christmas Eve or to other times to worship at Christmas. And this is a picture of perhaps sometime later, maybe Saint Bonaventure leading the faithful in the adoration of the Nativity. The nativity set then was kind of a pageant, and the church wanted to kind of tone that down a little bit, so it really kind of tried to get static nativity scenes like these and use them in local churches. And over time, and this is particularly in Italy, over time they began to become more and more elaborate. They were called percepios. And the percepio means crib, and it not only has the Christ child in it, but it also has a lot of animals and a lot of people. And a lot of them were kind of contemporized. In other words, they weren't scenes from biblical times, but they were more scenes from contemporary 13th and 14th century Europe. So there would be a lot of different things going on, and the sets got larger and larger. And they had some interesting parts of them. The sets, this kind of was a three-part set that shows the different aspects of it. Sometimes they were here on your left here. Sometimes they were in little Neapolitan villages. The middle set is one that is, if you look at it, there are these soaring columns here. And a lot of times the Presepe or the Nativity was built against kind of a Roman ruin. And that was to remind us that the coming of the Christ child did away with the old pagan world and ushered into the Christian era. Here on your right is actually a cave, and a lot of the very earliest nativity scenes were set in caves. Again, here we see in kind of a Romanesque scene. Again, everybody's kind of in contemporary clothing, not really biblical clothing or what we call Oriental clothing, but more contemporary clothing to the 12th century. Here's another scene of them in the Roman ruins. And of course, the nativity set then did expand into Europe. The nativity set was primarily something that was as Catholic, something in the Mediterranean region, particularly Italy. But in the rest of Europe, in Germany, for example, the main Christmas kind of decoration in the home was the Christmas tree. And the nativity set was, they were trying to get these out into homes and that to kind of, I guess, counteract the Christmas tree. Now in England, in Great Britain, they have these sets as well, but they also kind of embellish them by making these wonderful mince cookies every year. And that's part of their nativity tradition. The nativity, of course, came into the homes and then made their way to the United States. After World War II, there were nativities were in houses, but they were still kind of a rarity, mostly in Catholic homes. But after World War II, a lot of nativity sets came from Japan. And the reason was, and they were called Japan nativities or occupation nativities, the reason was that after World War II, during the occupation, they were trying to kind of find industries that the Japanese could do that, away from the munitions and armaments. And of course, one of them was the electronic industry, which we know real well. But the other one was making these nativity sets. And they made millions of them and sold millions of them, and they really became a mainstay in American homes from about 1946 into the mid-60s. And most people have one of these. Here's another one, a nice ceramic set, also from Japan. Again, this is a cave set. A lot of early nativities were caves. Now, just a few parts of a nativity. Very early on, the depiction of Jesus, of course, was of a baby that was in swaddling clothes. And swaddling is what? That's when you wrap them up real tight, after they're born. So this depiction of Jesus was seen from the very earliest times all the way up to the Renaissance. But during the Renaissance, the depiction of Jesus changed a little bit, and he wasn't swaddled. He had a lot less on, and that was to show kind of his humanity and his freedom. And of course, some nativities, even at that time, Jesus wasn't wearing anything. In the nativity set, the animals are particularly important. And most nativity sets have, if nothing else, a donkey and a cow. And they represent the Old and New Testament. The cow represents the Old Testament, the donkey represents the New. Another feature of a lot of older sets is the reclining Mary. Now, quite typically in a lot of sets you'd see Mary kneeling or sitting, but in a lot of the older depictions you see her reclining. And we'll see a couple of scenes of this. This is one from made in Mexico a couple of decades ago. There we see the reclining Mary and the reclining Joseph. Now Joseph in the Nativity set oftentimes kind of plays a secondary part. A lot of Nativity sets don't even feature Joseph, they just have the Madonna and Child. But Joseph is seen in one of two ways. He is seen either carrying a staff with a flower on it, and that goes back to a scripture that talks about when he was kind of chosen to marry Mary, so the legend goes, a dove came and sat on his staff and turned into a flower. And so he's often seen that way. And then he's also seen carrying a lantern, depicting Jesus as the light of the world. Another aspect of the Nativity, of course, is the shepherds. And the shepherds oftentimes are in threes, of course, the Trinity. But also, there is usually an old shepherd, a very young shepherd, and a very middle-aged shepherd. And that is to show the whole age of humanity. Also, the wise men are a big part. They were part of the earliest depictions of the Nativity, and they represent the rest of the world coming to Jesus, and Jesus being the King of Kings. This is a Christmas pyramid, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute here. I brought one of those along. Some of them are really big. In Poland, they have a unique nativity that's called a zupka, and this is like a very colorful miniature castle with the nativity inside. That's made out of cardboard and foil, and they have a big, especially in Krakow, Poland, they have a big competition every year in making these things. And the winners of the competition are really expensive. They sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Here's some Russian nesting doll nativity. And this is a Peruvian retablo, again, that we'll talk about in just a moment. Now, I wanted to show you a few of the nativities from around the world that I brought. We'll get to this one in just a minute. This is one from Malaysia, and it is it's called a terracotta, and this is a clay that is fired at a very low heat, about 800 degrees. Yeah. And it gives a nice bronze texture to it. This is a nice colorful set from Bali, and it is made out of balsa, which is a very light one. Feel that? It's very light, yeah. Very, very light.
Like wood.
Yeah, very light wood, very nicely colored.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can make your things out of it. But I like that one in particular. This is an interesting set. This is made out of, you can see it there. This is made out of banana fiber. And yeah, this is an African set. And what I think is pretty neat about the set is that this set includes not just the wise men and Joseph and Mary and the baby, but it includes musicians. And many times that's also part of the nativity tradition, is they have musicians come in. This is a beautiful hand-painted set from Mexico. And it's just it's very nicely hand-painted. I got this, actually Denise bought this at an estate sale. And I got that from our director.
Is that clay then? What would
This is clay. This would be ceramic.
Yep.
Okay. This is what's called a Christmas pyramid. And the origins of this are kind of interesting. They began in the Erzgebirge mountains in Germany. In the 7th century, a Christian monk came and introduced them to using the evergreen tree at Christmas time to represent the Trinity. And the original way that people would depict or put the tree in their house was to hang it upside down. Well, fortunately, they turned it back right side up over the centuries. But they made these little what we call nativities, pyramids, and you put candles in these, and the hot air goes up and moves them around. So they kind of have a motion to them. A lot of times they'll have, this has 2 tiers on it, but a lot of times they'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tiers. Sometimes they get very, very tall, and but they're very, very, it's very intricate.
Where did you say that was from Germany?
This is from Germany. This is the Erzgebirge mountains. And they do a lot of tin and silver mining.
Did they rely a lot on the airflow?
Well, they did rely on the airflow, and the reason that these are really important to use, because the miners would take these into the mines with them and light candles to make sure that there was oxygen in the mines. And so they would take these things, these things down there with them to kind of decorate the mine for Christmas. So these are really nice. Kids like to see these things move around. Now, Sue donated for today this wonderful set of beanbag nativities. Now, where did you get these?
I got them in a shop in Port Clinton.
Uh-huh.
They came from someplace in Asia,
Okay.
like India or
Oh, okay, yeah.
Malaysia.
Were they wrapped in cloth?
Yeah,
then?
just kind of wrapped in cloth there. Yep. Beautiful little set.
It was not expensive at all.
No. That's one good thing about kind of collecting nativities. It's not a real expense. It can be an expensive hobby. I've got nativities that are well over $500-600, but most of them aren't. This is a piece that we talked about a little bit last year, and this is called a retablo. A retablo is typically a box that has clay figures in them depicting kind of everyday life in Peru, and also they have them depicting religious scenes like the Nativity. These were originally used for altars, kind of portable altars that the Crusaders in the Crusades would take with them, into the field to say their mass, to have their prayers and their worship. And it came over into the New World in Peru with the conquistadors and the missionaries, and they used these to teach people about about Jesus and about the Bible. And so these are, this one is a handmade one. And I like the set and kind of the celebratory dancing.
Well, that is
And
interesting.
it is. Okay. These are from Guatemala, and they are from clay that they get from the riverbank, and they bake the clay in the sun. They don't put it in a kiln or anything. They kind of use bake it in the sun, and then they hand paint it and put these wonderful little cloths on them. And you kind of, feel that. Yeah, they're really nice. They use kind of a, yeah. That's very pretty.
Looks like cloth.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty.
Yeah. That's, this particular print, it's a kind of a copy of a print, and this was made by a Japanese Christian artist named Sado Watanabe. Now, Sado Watanabe was born into a Buddhist family, and his parents were killed early in his life, and he was an orphan and adopted by Christian missionaries. And when he was later a teenager, he converted to Christianity. Always wanted to be an artist. And so he took up the ancient Japanese art of woodblock printing. And woodblock printing is an art because each one of these colors here is a different pressing of a different woodblock. So you would have to line it up and then press the colors very carefully to make sure that they didn't bleed into each other and that they were all in the right lines and everything. And he primarily concentrated on biblical scenes from the Old and New Testament. And this is one of his scenes of the Nativity. And you can see it's kind of a very intricate scene. Yeah. The actual print itself would probably be about twice this size. But this gives you a good idea of what. A lot going on in there.
Yeah, they're all looking at it.
Yeah. Here, I'll show that to you can see it. All across Europe and United States, they have these things around Christmas time called Christmas markets. They're usually in big cities, and they sell a lot of Christmas items. The Christmas market originated in Germany, so primarily they sell German goods. This is a set that we got that I really just love the colors. It's kind of a centerpiece.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of muted colors.
Would these be trees?
Yeah, these would be trees, and then you put the candles in there. It's kind of, as I say, it's kind of a centerpiece. I'll show it to everybody here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of an interesting, whimsical piece. We got this at a museum in Chicago, and this is from Peru. And this is the Nativity kind of depicted with the peasants in front of the old pueblos that they have. And You can see a lot of interesting things. The wise men here, instead of bringing the frankincense and myrrh and gold, they bring kind of fruits and vegetables to Jesus. And I'll take this around. Show you. This is a heavy one. Yeah.
So this is bringing, well, they just are bringing
Yeah.
cakes.
Yeah. Kind of again, kind of contemporizing the nativity, bringing it into their world.
How did they fasten? Did they have glue or what? How do they?
I think this was all molded. I don't know how it was. Some of it was glued probably, but it was just kind of fastened.
Sort of the idea, if you do this to the least of them, you do
Yeah.
it also unto me.
Yeah, you see a lot of that in the Peruvian nativities. Now this piece here is from South Africa, and I'll show you the pieces here. It's glazed, but you notice that there are a lot of cracks on it. See that? Kind of even though it's very smooth, it's got a lot of kind of little kind of cracks, yeah, in there. And this is from this is made from a Japanese pottery tradition that's called raku. And I wanted to show you a little video to kind of conclude, if I can do that today, about how they fire and make these things. It's quite interesting. There we go. This over here. Okay. There we go. Let's see here. I'll just describe it to you. What they do is they take a regular, just a regular form. They put glaze on it, fashion the animal. They put glaze on it, and then they'll put it into fired up. They'll put it into a kiln that's about 1,400 degrees. And after it's been in there a while, then they take it out very quickly, and they put it in sawdust and cool it down that way, and then put it almost immediately from there into the water. And that process creates this wonderful glaze where you see all these wonderful kind of cracks in it. And it makes a very unique look. I also like this one because it used a lot of the indigenous animals. You don't see very many giraffes in a nativity scene, do you? Or zebras or elephants. So that's why I kind of like this one. So these are nativities from around the world, and what I love about collecting nativities is that each one is unique and different, and each one reflects the culture that it comes from, but still tells the same universal story of the birth of Christ. And even though they're all very similar, they all kind of come down to one main point, and that is Christ's humanity and Christ coming into the world as a humble baby. And so, again, this Monday we'll have many, many more sets set up here in the auditorium for you to enjoy during the lunchtime, and I hope you do. Do you have any questions about the Nativity? Okay.
In one of the depictions you had, the baby Jesus had a black face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
I think the baby Jesus a lot of times will reflect the culture and even some of the races.
It was from South Africa.
From South Africa, yeah, that made it. And you'll see depictions also of a very Asian-looking Jesus. But as we saw kind of with the Persepi all the way back to the 13th century, that's another great aspect of the Nativity, is that it doesn't take Jesus kind of out of your culture. It puts Jesus in your culture. And whether you're from Mexico or from Bali or South Africa or Malaysia, you'll see in these sets Jesus as part of the culture, somebody born into the culture, not someone distant 2,000 years ago. And so that's a lot of how people have used these nativities.
How did you happen to get all these? Did you travel?
Well, I wish I could say I went to all these countries, but I didn't. This one I got off the internet from a company called Yonder Star. These down here in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a movement of artisans from the third world called Thousand Villages, or called Fair Trade, and they had these artisans make a lot of nativities from other countries and paint them up and things like that. And so nativities began to become more and more international, and that really kind of exploded the whole idea of collecting these things and sharing them.
I think that shop in Port Clinton is called Fair Trade.
Yeah, they're Fair Trade or Thousand Village shops all over the place. I know in Lakeside there's one, but that's a wonderful place to find unusual nativities from all around the world. And another great thing about nativities is that it's a real art form. These are made out of all kinds of different materials, and they kind of show the nativity, as I say, in unique ways. And I've seen nativities that are made out of wood and clay, but also glass, also tin cans. And you'll see on Monday probably about 40 or 50 different materials that nativities are made out of. So you can make them out of just about any medium you want to, but again, you form that into that one sacred story of Christ's birth. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for allowing me to share a portion of my sets with you, and I know, Joe, you got a set. Hopefully you'll share that with us on Monday, and so we'll see a lot more of these, and this is a good way to, I think, to kind of kick off the Christmas season, focusing in on the real reason for it.
My favorites are the two of the